You're brand new? First time? Okay. Not as many as usual, but this is good. I see some old faces. I even see some old speakers. They are old, and they used to be speakers. So, that was a joke, y'all. That was a joke. That was a joke. Okay, so important business. The restrooms over here. Ladies this way, gentlemen here. And let me see. The bar is back there. We have Ashley, Poppy, and Louise. Tip them graciously. And save some of your money so you can donate it to us. So we're going to do the thing. Yes. And I'm sorry if I fumble a little bit, and I have to say this because I just found out that I have to say that I am recovering from 2 concussions, and something happens in my brain that it makes me stop stuttering. So I said it, so now I can talk smooth. All right, so sit back, enjoy the introduction, and I'll be back. Gosh, you guys, that was paltry. Come on, try that one more time. I'm running for office or something. Poppy, could you turn this up just a little bit because I feel like I need to swallow the thing before you hear me. Okay, can you hear me better? Yeah. Okay, so quick announcements. This is Houseless in Portlandia. If that's not what you're looking for, you're in the wrong place. Next month is called Coincidence or Intentional Overt Racism During Black History Month. Go to your computer and put in Racism During Black History Month, and you will be amazed at what pops up. So we're going to have someone from Wyden and Kennedy, Jeff Selby, who is from the Office of Equity and Human Resources. Right, what is that? Equity and Human Rights. Good thing I used to be on the commission, huh? And then Dr. James Mason, who is the former director of Equity at Providence Hospital. Thank you. Why don't you come up here? That's what you have kids for, you know? Okay, so, all right. So at your table, there is, excuse me, hold on. Because people have been shirking their responsibility. You need to fill this out. You need to fill in your information so we can put you on our mailing list. So please make sure you fill this out. If you are a facilitator, please make sure that everyone does it. If they don't do it, they will implode as they try to walk out the door. And then,
could you say more about the identity?
We are working on getting grants, and what we, on this thing it says I'd like to participate in an affinity dialogue group. An affinity group is people who are like you. I used to say that you have to have a person of color at your table to have a discussion, and I found that people of color were feeling uncomfortable because they felt that they were being, what's the word, Shannon?
Traumatized.
Thank you. Traumatized. I'm telling you, I got it for a reason. And so they were feeling traumatized when people were discounting their experience. And so what we realized is that we probably need to have a group, a discussion group where people who are like all black people, all Latinos, all white people, so you can be there and be comfortable and not be concerned about, gee, am I offending this person? You know, did I say the right thing? Did I ask this question the right way? So we're working on getting grants to get, so we can have those affinity groups. And if you know of someone who has money and would like to fund us, please let us know. Shayna, stand up so they can see who you are, please. So this is the person to tell. She doesn't have concussions. So, all right, so also at your place is an evaluation. And this, please fill it out. We did something different this month. We added something about facilitators, so you can put your facilitator. Facilitator, you should put your name on that line for your folks. And then down here in the blue, put in some pointers. We've recently trained a new group of facilitators. We have a training this weekend, a 21-hour training. And by the time these folks finish doing all the training, they will have over 100 hours of training about how to lead discussions about race. So would our facilitators please stand so everyone can see who you are and applaud and ooh and ah. Thank you. And we have volunteers back there at the back table who are faithful people who do a great job. I'm just so excited about having all these people to help. I don't even know how to act. So, when you leave tonight, make sure you get a Race Talk 2 or 3, 4 or 5 brochures, take with you, give to your friends. There's paper for you to take notes, there's pens, and later there's these little colored thingies. We'll talk about what these are later, Joe and I will. And there's an envelope here for all the money that you're going to put in here as a donation toward Race Talks. And make sure, you know, if you want to get this so that it's on your taxes, we have back there at the back table, what do you call that? A square or something like that? Yeah. Okay, we have a, for cards. So, all right, and last announcement, oh no, one more thing. Okay, so there is Earth Dance. It's a 6:30 performance, 7 o'clock artist talk, Friday, April 26th. We happen to have the folks who are doing it here in the room tonight, Bobby Father, and Kayla Banks are choreographers, and Lena Lewis is the director. So this will be at PNCA, you know, Portland, what does that stand for?
Pacific Northwest College of Art.
Right, Pacific Northwest College of Arts, and that's at 511 Northwest Broadway, across from the old main, not library, post office. I'm telling you, I can't wait till I get my brain back. Also, we have a drawing tonight for $25, and you should be looking across the room to see if there's someone that you would like to catch up with, you know? Like, it might be somebody that you think is really wonderful looking or very bright looking. They don't have to look wonderful, they just look bright. And so you think you want to get together with them. So at the end of the evening, we'll tell you how to do have the drawing. If you have to leave early, 2 things, please fill out the evaluation, leave it at the back table or at your table, and get that person to sign up and drop the card in, and you can leave your thingy at the table. Wait a minute, don't they have to be here for the drawing? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, never mind, forget what I said. But you can still exchange numbers. You can still exchange numbers, okay? All right, tonight I am very excited to have these folks here to speak. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and we finally were able to make it happen. We have Ibrahim Mubarak, who is the Executive Director of Right to Survive, and Peter Langford, who is a housing advocate, and Adam Carpinelli, who is on the board of Right to Survive. And these folks are very amazing, and they have an amazing story to tell. And I hope, you know, before we, just so you know, before we come, okay, hold on. The facilitators are trained, and we spent like an hour and a half the other night talking about tonight's presentation and how we can best deliver the goods for you so that you have your best conversation. And the thing that came up during that discussion is that all of us have either been homeless or close to it or unemployed and not knowing what was going on. So understand that most of us are like a paycheck away from being houseless. And that's very scary. So tonight, what we encourage people to do when they come to Race Talks is to sign up for an organization that is associated with the topic. Back at the volunteer table, there is a sign-up sheet. Also there, and Miss Bernie's back there, that she's holding it up at the back table where you came in. Out in the hall, there's one out there, and Adam is going to pass around a clipboard. And I didn't think to ask this question, but Adam did, and the question is, are you houseless? Because if you are, these folks can help give you some help. So
we'll try.
Well, I have faith in them. Okay, they will try, but I know that they will bust their butts in every way they can to make sure that they help you. I really am excited about this. They will introduce themselves and tell their credentials and all that stuff. But thank you so much, and thank you for coming to Race Talks. And they will speak, and then we will have a Q&A. And then after that, we'll have the small group discussion. So thank you very much.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Power to the people.
Power to the people.
All power to the people.
All power.
Wanted to acknowledge too, we got at least one person who I know is one of the co-founders of the Black Panther Party here in Portland. So I just want to acknowledge Mr. Kent Ford for being here tonight. And I put him on the spot. But that's, this old ritual when meetings would happen, right? We say, power to the people, or we say, all power to the people. That's the response. Yeah. So power to the people.
All power to the people.
All right, thank you. So I'm here to get everybody riled up. My name is Adam Carpinelli. I'm a board member for Right to Survive. This is our website that's up here. So make sure you check it out. Follow us on social media and all that good stuff. We are going to have some tabling stuff that's available. Some of it's not out front right now. So when we take a break, we'll have some of our swag out. So this is our t-shirt that I'm proudly wearing here. These are $20. So buy as many as you can. Get ready for the holidays or whatever, stocking stuffers and all that good stuff. So Right to Survive's local grassroots organization. We have just a few folks who have some very humble compensation for the work that we do, but otherwise it's really consisting of volunteers, and started out completely grassroots where we didn't have really any staffing or anything like that. And our founder will talk more about how all that came up. And so we consist of a board. There's a few folks on there, including myself. Some of those folks are also here tonight. Maybe raise your hand just to acknowledge those folks who also participate with Right to Survive. And thank those people for putting in all their hard time and work to do this. And so I want to start the event off in a good way by, first things first, as Donna mentioned, we have a clipboard, and we're expecting you to leave your contact information. You don't have to, but we'll twist your arm about it. And I'm going to pass it out because sometimes people are always passing by tables, and it's easy to kind of bypass, and there's a lot of tabling stuff going on with the voting and all of that. So I'm actually going to literally pass this out. It also asks people if they're interested in volunteering, and does have that question on here that we ask people if they're comfortable to answer that question. And when we're in the community doing events and tabling, then we also ask people that. So if they're looking for help, then we can try to do what we can around that. So I'm going to start with this table. Just make sure it gets around. So it's going to start here. Just expect that it's going to get passed back. So please do your diligence to sign it or not and pass it on. So thank you very much for that. So second thing to start off with that we thought was really important is, so this talk, this panel is about housing. It's about houselessness in America, and it would kind of behoove us if we didn't really start this off without really mentioning the fact that it's really about land, right? We're talking about space, we're talking about land. A lot of us here, if we don't identify as Native or Indigenous to the Americas, then we are visitors here, we're settlers, and also acknowledging the fact that part of why we're here also is because of the history of slavery and colonialism in general. So I think it was a few months ago, near the end of last year, Right to Survive participated in what was a candlelight vigil and kind of a small march in Southeast Portland. And that was actually acknowledging all the people who had died living out on the streets. And so that was a really moving event for us. And wanted to, again, just take like a moment of silence to think about some of the things that were just mentioned there, that we're talking about land and displacement, thousands of people who have been displaced over the last couple hundred years of this legacy of slavery and colonialism in the Americas, and how that's affected all these people who have passed away living out on the streets. So thanks everybody for your thoughts. Often the use of the term homeless brings up a lot of baggage for a lot of people, especially for folks who have not had that experience living outside. And the kind of things that come up as far as really bad stereotypes include things of a criminal nature, of drugs, and these kind of different things that come up. So as you see for the title for this event, then we're talking about houseless and unhoused people. And so if people aren't familiar with that term, then this is something to start just thinking about more of using that term, and really just trying to kind of flip the script on that and change the language around it. And we're talking about all kinds of different people living outside. I usually think of it as like good people in bad situations. Again, there's this idea of people who might represent like a threat to society. And so when working or advocating with folks who have, really it's the issue of housing instability or lack of having a house, is houseless or unhoused people. We can also refer to people living outside. One of our board members talks a lot about that, just people living outside. So it's a way to change our minds, and really we're here to try to dismantle this whole cycle and system of criminalizing people living outside. And that's a lot of the work that what we do entails is looking at that whole phenomena of the criminalization of all kinds of different people and the kind of really heinous laws that affect that. So again, not having a house is not a crime. People maybe heard the phrase that also, when we talk about immigration in America, that nobody's illegal. So these are the kind of ideas that were going on this premise. And Right to Survive is also part of a larger national network called the Western Regional Advocacy Project. That's another thing you can jot down and look up. We're part of RAP. And so that's also a really important effort, which is called the Houseless Bill of Rights. And it really covers a lot of these things. And so we can maybe talk more about that later. So how do we value people's lives? How do we think about what real criminality is? How do we build safe communities? We talk about criminality, out on the streets, but then there are people who are, whatever you want to call it, like, elite criminals who are, making laws and are director-in-chief, or whatever you want to call him, is representative of that kind of criminality. And so also, again, when we talk about flipping the script and talking about criminality, really keeping that thread in mind that there's some severe criminality going on really from the top. And so people on the streets are really the folks who get targeted the most for those reasons. And they're largely people of color. And of course, that's also built into the whole system of class in America. So these are some of the factors when we look at why people are out on the streets. There's economics, people's socioeconomic status. We're in this kind of hyper-capitalism in the 21st century now. Housing is affecting everyone. I'm glad Donna mentioned the whole premise of that there's 60% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. So that includes probably, 60% of us in this room. So it really does not surprise us, it shouldn't surprise us that there is a housing crisis going on, and that people don't have access to those things. Meanwhile, advocacy groups, nonprofits like us, who run on very small fumes and funding, are the ones really trying to pick up this work. And meanwhile, the state spends billions of dollars on military prison industrial complex. I think folks are probably aware that we have, over a couple million folks who are locked up in prison industrial complex. That does not include the rate of youth incarceration, which I just wanted to say a few things about as far as how youth are affected in this whole ball of wax, because we have plenty of youth who are out on the streets. I work with incarcerated youth and also houseless youth in the Portland community. And, it's one thing that we're talking about, just the fact that people are outside, but it's like, why are they outside? Sometimes it has to do with the fact that people are targeted, by the police and then locked up and then get out, whether they're youth or adults, and are not able to access services and they don't have a support network. And so these are like some other things that are really crucial to think about. Very often when people are released from incarceration, we'll have like a clear plastic bag with their belongings in it and like a bus pass. So if you see what I'm getting at, that's already a direct route to being unhoused, period. And it depends, that person might have even already come from that situation. I only have another minute or two left on that. So just wanted to say that when we look at Oregon as a state, we have one of the highest rates of youth incarceration. A lot of that has to do with a lot of laws. Laws against people who are unhoused number about 224. So again, we have no time to talk about what those laws are right now. But just to know that basically, as far as maybe just to give you some, that's like a quick number here, but like every 15 minutes, a house resident will call 911 to report the presence of unsheltered folks. And 52% of all those arrested by Portland police are unhoused. And again, when we look at those laws around people who are incarcerated, who are arrested for living outside, they're largely completely nonviolent crimes and relate specifically to the fact that there are people who are accessing or trying to access, but again, they can't because they're outside, go to the bathroom, to get shelter and things like that. That's what people are largely arrested for. So these are the key problems right there. And most of those reports that we're talking about, again, are because people are building small shelters and things like that, and then they're getting torn down. So the bottom line is we will never arrest our way out of any of these problems. And Donna brought up an excellent question about what are the costs of these kind of things. And so when it comes to looking at the Measure 11 law that incarcerates youth, sometimes could be like for the rest of their life, they're being tried as adults. Everybody familiar with Measure 11 in Oregon by any chance? Like, sounds like a couple people are. Look up Measure 11 if you're not familiar with it, because this is crazy, crazy law. Thanks so much to Vera Katz, apparently, for bottom lining that one. Of course, I'm being totally sarcastic. So, but the cost of this incarceration, when we look at numbers, it gets close to like $100,000 a year. Just to have like one youth or one adult being locked up in the system, when again, we could just be dealing with having services and things like that. And again, with all the reports that I was talking about, and I think we want to bring this up too, because again, there's this whole thing about like, how do you, this question of, like, if you're a housed person, you've never experienced houselessness, how do you quote unquote deal with an unhoused person, right? Well, definitely calling the cops is definitely, first and foremost, not the thing to do. And on top of that, it just leads to more problems. What the city does is they do sweeps. I don't know if anybody's familiar with sweeps. And so then every once in a while, the city will mandate, we're gonna just do these sweeps, and they go around, take everybody's stuff, break down tents, and next thing you know, everybody's still unhoused, but now they're completely unsheltered with the few things that they were able to get from either somebody else on the street, giving them a tarp, maybe getting a couple of dollars and going to the dollar store and buying like some duct tape and things like that to make some kind of shelter for themselves. And so then these things are torn down. So again, keep in mind about investing in the youth here and what that means with the money that's spent. And so again, we'll have tabling stuff out. It's not out yet, so just hit us up, come grab a t-shirt. There's a few flyers that are outside for a youth music program that supports incarcerated and underserved youth. That's out on the table, and that's called Keys Beats Bar. So it's these kind of things that we're trying to develop to at least have some services for people on the outside who are living out. So I'm glad I got to go first because these folks are a very tough act to follow. So without further ado, I'd like to present our distinguished colleagues here. You want this mic or you want that one? Thank you very much.
Power to the people? Aye. All power to the people. I'm not going next, so I'm just going to pass the mic on. But I wanted to thank Adam for giving us some of that information, those statistics. It's not really easy being up here. We did prepare, but sometimes you get in front of a room of folks and everything goes in all different directions. So I'm not going to take up too much time. I will be following Eve. He is a hard act to follow. But I just want to thank all you guys for being here this evening. Thank you, Donna, for inviting us. Thank you, Shayna, for being with your mom and making this happen for us. It's what, 10 years? Going on 10 years? 9 years. It's a blessing. Thank you.
You all don't mind if I stand up? Okay. I'm Ibrahim Mubarak, and I'm the founder of Right to Survive. Donna wanted me to talk my history, but I think that's kind of boring, so I'm going to talk real fast about my history and go on to the real exciting shit, okay? Okay. I went through a bad divorce, so I knew I had graduated from 4 different colleges. I played football for the University of Michigan. I tried out for the Detroit Lions, and I got banged up, and I think that's why my wife left me, because I wasn't in the spotlight anymore. So I would put a city, a state, and a country on the dartboard and spin that dartboard and throw a dart. Wherever that dart went, that's where I went. And I did that for 2 years. And I disappeared off the map. And in that second year, I asked my aunt, she was doing a genealogy tree, and I said, what am I made of? And she said that I was mixed with German, Irish, Choctaw Indian, and Somali African. So I went to those places, and I left America as a disgruntled, educated fool, and went to Africa, embraced Islam, changed my name, my mannerism, and came back to America as a humanitarian. So the first place I landed, from coming from Africa was in Minneapolis, Minnesota in the wintertime. Yeah, that was a culture shock. So I said, hey, I got to get out of here. So I did my dart thing and came to Portland, Oregon. And it was harsh because Portland rains. I was used to different type of weather. So I got a job and I contract myself out and I stayed in the shelters, and I realized the people I was in the shelters with wasn't getting productive. Not thinking that everyone that lived on the street didn't have the type of education I had. So I quit my job. I was working at Fujitsu, troubleshooting Pico and SCSI hard drives, and I quit my job to live in the streets to see why they wasn't getting productive. So I ran into a couple of people, and it was Jack Jafari, JP Cup, and they was doing homeless liberation front. They was tired of homeless people being targeted. So on Martin Luther King Day, we did a parade, and we would put homeless veterans who had their legs cut off in wheelchairs, put them in front of us, and we would do a parade through the whole city, and each time we did a parade, we'd get bigger and bigger, and we stopped off at Sister Rose who fed us, and I don't know if you can see me in there, but I had a sign that said, I love you, Vera Katz. So it's somewhere in there. And so we did Dignity Village, but they had a camping ban, and so they said, what can we do as a camping band? You just came from Africa, give us some insight. I never wanted to be put on the forefront. So I said, well, let's call it a village. It's not a village then. That's how we found Dignity Village. After Dignity Village, I left Dignity Village because people were saying,
Explain what Dignity Village is.
Dignity Village is the first sanctioned tiny house village in this country. Let's want to go into my time, Don, if I get interrupted. And so people were saying there's more and more people out there, and I was introduced to the LGBTQ community, the emancipated youth, and other people that couldn't get housing. So I went back onto the streets, and all I had was $10 and a bike. So I took my $10, made $10 a flyer, and said, hey, I want to start a new organization where homeless people are going to organize themselves and be productive and fight for their rights. And so that's how I found Right to Survive. After Right to Survive, we did a lot. We came up, we did a picture tent. And picture tent is where the city allowed people that live inside to put tents along the parade route and stay overnight and watch the Rose Festival parade. So we put tents along the parade route, put houseless people in there, and they slept well, and they said, where do we sleep now? And we didn't look at them, so one of my constrictor and Trey and Shannon said, let's go to the Rainbow Gathering. And so we went to the Rainbow Gathering, and I saw where no money was allowed and everybody was helping each other. And while I was up there, I got a call from this disgruntled landowner and say, hey, the city won't let me do a fucking thing with my land. You can have it as long as you don't cost me no damn money. I said, okay. So that was good. I said, okay. So I left the mountain and met with him. And so we talked, the members of Right to Survive talked and said, what should we do? We all noticed that the houseless people saying they got good rest. But then it was a sidewalk ordinance law where houseless people couldn't linger around, couldn't sit in that. So they wanted to build a rest stop where people can go and rest. I said, no, let's do a different rest stop. And they said, okay, it's in your hands. And so that's when I called it a rest area, because it's still not a camping ban. So Right Survive became a rest area where people can come in and sleep for 24 hours, because most people had a job, but they was working at nights. When they get off of work, they couldn't sleep because the shelter system was closed. So we made a 24-hour, and we had a couple's tent, a men's tent, and a women's tent. And then we dealt with people with different preferences, gender preferences, and we would go in there. And so the city fined us under the ordinance of a rest stop. You know, like when you're driving on the highway going from state to state or city to city, and you stop over and get some rest. And they fined us under that $600 a month, and it doubled for the next 6 months. And so we countersued them, a bunch of ignorant houseless people, as they say. I told them that we was houseless, not sensitive. And we sued them, and we won $859,000. And in that advocating, we made out schematics and stuff on how we was going to do, how we was going to live, how we was going to become productive. And in that time, I was there for 5 years. 450 people found housing, 400 people found work, 18 women were able to keep their babies. Because if a houseless woman get pregnant, the hospitals are obligated to call DHS, and they come snatch their babies away from them and send them through hoops to prove that they're good parents, not because they was in a bad situation. 33 people stopped using heroin drugs. 18 people went back to school getting their GED. And in 1 year, 4 people graduated from college, 3 from PSU and 1 from PCC. And we still got people going to college now that's doing good. And 1 is on our board. Yeah. And I wanted to talk about the disparity in homelessness, because it's 6%. I want to talk about the disparity in houselessness, because it's 6% of people of color in this state, and 3% is in jail, and 4% is living on the streets, and you don't see them because they hidden away because of the disparity, because they get attacked. And I want to show this chart on the differences and people that are living on the street in homelessness, and they're saying, where are all the blacks, where are the Hispanic, where are the Native American? And we had a talk one time where I had this white houseless guy and this black houseless guy, and they was arguing who had it better. But if a white houseless person goes to get productive, he would get that situation taken care of to be more productive than his black counterpart would. And so we started doing research on that. And as Adam said, we work with RAP, Western Region Advocacy Project, and they did a research of students doing these graphics, and they let us know how the differences is in this country on people of color getting more productive once they hit the bottom. I just want to remind you, we were something before we became houseless, so whatever we were when we became houseless, that's what we are when we are houseless, just more imploded because we out in the open and y'all see everything we do. Every houseless person is not on drugs. Every houseless woman is not a prostitute. Every houseless person is not lazy. It's just the way we look at them, that people in houses look at them and say, oh, I'm glad that's not me. I'm gonna stick my hand in a pumpkin pie and lift it up and say, what a good person am I. But you know, you're not far from being houseless yourself. And these are the graphics on how things is going in the criminalization and how this country is more interested in nuclear submarines than they are in getting people housing. And this is my favorite one. When I tell people that I'm the 3 worst things in the American government that you can be, do anybody know what they are? Somebody been listening to me. Yeah, I'm a Muslim, and so you got Islamic phobia. I'm houseless, you have Islamic phobia, and this is the worst thing I've seen. This one. And that's why I move around when I'm talking, because I don't know if the police in here, they may try to shoot me. So be aware of my moving around. And this is what happens when people don't care about people that lose their housing or what color they are. And this is what we have to be aware of. No matter what color you are, no matter what your social status is, no matter what gender preference you are human. If you're not helping houseless people, you're living beneath your privilege as a human, because it's required. A lot of people rely on their spirituality, a lot of people rely on their knowledge, a lot of people rely on their self, but we all in the same melting pot. We all fighting for crumbs that they've given us, especially with the orange man that's in office now. Yeah. And this is what Adam was talking about, the prison industrial complex. How many minutes I got? Because I got a lot of shit to talk about. I can talk real fast.
8 more.
8 more, okay. And this is talking about the prison industrial complex, that who goes to prison, how they get there. They take out public restrooms. Let me talk about that for one thing. That's the main important thing. You don't have no public restroom. You go to these businesses, you say, no, the restroom is used for paid customers. So what happens when you grow up from kindergarten, they teaching you to go to the restroom, all of a sudden you thrust into being houseless where you don't have a restroom. If you get 3 citations or urinate in public here in Portland, you have to register as a sex offender. If you get 3 citations for urinating in public here in Portland, you have to register as a sex offender because they say that's indecent exposure and that's a mild sex offender. But they don't have sex offender 1, sex offender 2, sex offender 3. And you can say, oh, he was using the bathroom, so we can hire him. It just says sex offender. So that is a criminalization that stops you from getting productive when you go to look for work, or you go to look for housing, or you go to look for education. So what do a person do? Next slide. And you can see these, notice the roots of disparity. This is back in Vanport before I got here. and how people was living. And these are no camping bans. So where are people supposed to go? What are people supposed to do? And so I said, must we always have this without housing? Must people always live without housing? I know you heard of the 3 little pigs where they had the brick house, the wooden house, the straw house, but they forgot to tell you about the 4th little pig who lived in the vinyl house. And that's because they didn't want you to know that it is sanitary to live in a tent, if you can have the amenities. And RAP came out with this book. I think everybody should get it, Without Housing. It shows the graphic from Roosevelt to now in the Reagan area, how they start cutting the disparities in housing and the Hope 6, and how people get the eviction notice, and how people are being reduced to sleeping on the sidewalk. Now people are being reduced to the new affordable housing, which is called car camping. And they're doing that because they used to being sheltered from the elements. They're doing that because they want to keep their families together. Because if Joe, anybody and I was married and we had a child and we became houseless, I don't know what gender I take on the female gender. He'll go to the men's shelter, I go to the women's shelter, and where do our child go? Out into the streets or to foster care, where they pay that foster parent anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500 a month to watch my child while I jump through hoops to prove that I'm a good parent. Why can't they give me that $1,200 to $1,500 while I get an apartment and keep my family together? This shows the separation right here. When you first become houseless, you go in here, and then they kick you out the back door. Men here, women there, children anywhere. And just like welfare, how it was created to help you get on your feet, houselessness has become a way of life for children that's running the street with no honor, with no teaching, with no education. So they're just running rampant, where we got to go and grab our children and educate them and stop looking at them as vagabonds or anything else to become productive. Because that's where our country is going to boil down to. We want to talk about sweeps and criminalization that Adam had put before, and I'm going to go through fast because I just been told I got 5 minutes to go. And so I want to let you know that sweeps and it's not criminalizing people. It's the new form of gentrification and genocide, where you take people's stuff in the middle of the winter and in the rain, and people are dying constantly. Last year we had how many people down the street because they had no shelter? Who know that number? And the houseless advocate, 45 people down the street? And the year before, a pregnant lady couldn't get inside, and she had a baby in the bus stop, and that baby died because nobody would let her in, would shelter her. That's us. That represents America. That represents Oregon. That represents Portland. It represents you. Because again, if you're not doing anything, you're a part of the solution. And when people are swept, people are being reduced to living on the waterfront. With the Right to Survive is with an organization called Portland Harbor Community Coalition, or the Superfund site, where we're trying to address the industrial people from polluting the water. And people are living there because they've been pushed to the edge of the earth, where they growing vegetation and drinking the water, which is toxic. So if the water is toxic, the sediment in the soil is toxic. If they growing vegetation in there, what are they eating? Toxic vegetables. And we're allowing that. And it is a solution to that. 3 minutes? Okay. I go to the next one. Next slide. The next slide. The next slide. These are the culverts. The Business Improvement District. There's nothing wrong with improving your life. There's nothing wrong with improving yourself. But if you're improving yourself and hurting other people, there's something wrong with that. improvement means improvement of the whole situation, not just for yourself, for your own kind. We have to stop being a selfish nation and become viable for everybody.
Yeah.
And then next slide. Yeah, this is I want to show you how housing with the Hope 6, how it was famous for helping people with low income, and you can see as it goes down, and you can see the graph has a flat line, and you can see the handcuffs growing up, how people been criminalized, how houseless people been criminalized for growing up, just for existing, just for believing in the American dream. The American dream states that we go to school, go to college, get married, have 2.5 children, buy a house with a white picket fence, and have a dog that say Bow Wow. And if you don't achieve that, you're not American, because that's the dream. The dream, you have to be asleep to believe it. Because how many people out here have their own house? That's a lot of people out there. There's nothing wrong with that, but don't stop nobody else from getting that. Next slide. And this is the one that I like the most. Yeah. It says, homelessness is a visible manifestation of society that is lacking social justice. Okay, that's it. I have more, but that's it. So if you want to know more, come to RaceTalks to come talk with me. Thank you much.
If everyone just want to, if you want to, stand up for a second to shake off some of that, or take that in. I know we've been sitting, and I'm nervous, so I want y'all to stretch with me. As your community health worker, rock star.
Okay, they wasted enough of your time.
Okay, yep, that's okay, y'all. Yep, y'all can sit down. Good evening once again. My name is Laquita Lanford. I am, thank you. I'm much appreciative to be here on this panel with these amazing folks that had gotten a part of this work started before I returned to Portland in 2014. I lived here twice, and this is my second go around, but I just want to give you guys a little bit of background about who I am and what brought me to this space in this very moment. I was born in Los Angeles, California, in the late 70s, and my mother she got pregnant with me at the age of 15 years old, and she had me at 16 years old, and I'm the oldest of 8 children. And so at that time, and my father is from Central America, from Belize, and was an immigrant at that time, and my mother and father were not really together because of his immigration status or him being illegal in the country. And so my mom decided that I was one of the best gifts that she could ever be offered. And so she gave birth to me, she delivered me, and she was a young mom that didn't have any experience about parenting. Her mother and her grandmother there was 3 women, that was our generation. My mother had no brothers, she had no sisters, she had no uncles, she had no aunts. She just had her mother and her grandmother, who passed shortly, in the early 80s. And so I grew up in this situation. Before we're talking about being homeless and houseless in the 21st century, as language has transitioned. And so I am a part of that product that the government said that would not exist, would not stand here before you today, would not be able to even exist, because we were a statistic in that poverty community in Los Angeles, California, where there was no healthy grocery stores. I didn't live in public housing, but we did live in a very low income community. There was not a lot of services that was available at that time. There was a clinic that was down the street, and that clinic was not very well-functioning clinic for the people in the community. And so at that time, what I remember is my mom just being, doing the best that she could do and giving us what she could give, but she also was on public assistance. She also was on welfare. And in 1976, there was a woman from Chicago that was named, very recognizable, the welfare queen. And so the way that the administrative put that information out at that particular time, which was Ronald Reagan, and he made this woman out to be such a horrible person that she had, all these names. She had, and it's just recently from a recent study that I had heard about that, but I didn't really go in depth into that. And this is what Portland has done for me. It has allowed me to go really deep into research about my own life when I returned back to Portland, because it wasn't that I was living oblivious. I had a lot of questions that wasn't being answered throughout the journey of my life, of my young years into my teen years and living in another country. And so this stigma that we talk about, the disparities in the 80s that was written in books, in literature around the black woman. So there has always been a shortage of housing for black people, but specifically for black women. So they took the black man out of the home to provide and nurture their children with the black woman because of the policies that were put in place. So if you received any type of benefits at that time, you weren't going to get any help. And so and at that time, because the knowledge and the information was not there for these young women, these single mothers who became single mothers overnight, because we're still not too long lingering from segregation, displacement, not having land, so you have people who moved to certain cities. My mom's mother and grandmother were from the South. And so going back from that, their parents were slaves. So I'm the first generation of slave descendants to still be on this land in America at this moment in time, on two sides of the fence for me, right? And so at that particular time, we're living in LA. There is a lot of policing that's happening in my community because of gang violence, which was really something that, from the time I was 1 to I was probably 6, I slept on the floor and I had a bed because the helicopters constantly was in our community and red lights and lights was flashing on just regular men just going from point A to point B if they was not trying to incarcerate them. And so the women in the community were afraid of these men because the picture that the news depict of these black men. Because we still have that slave mentality, right? We're still not too far from 1865 where slavery is abolished, allegedly, right? So we got the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. They said in 1965 we can vote. But if we didn't have the information, if you kept literature from us, how were we supposed to know the steps in order for us to be able to vote, right? So we go back to those times where in the 80s, what they did when they incarcerated those young men, they put them in jail. When they came out, they gave them a sack. They gave them a sack of crack. Because we talk about the war on drugs, but we talk about it in a way that it's like, in this day and age, it's context. It's a lot of context, right? And so that is what evolved and what happened within my community, what happened with other parents, single moms. I would just speak on single moms because that happened to my mother. So it wasn't because she said, oh, today I'm going to pick up the pipe and I'm going to smoke dope. Nah, my mom, she lost her grandmother, who was her support system, and then she lost her mother 6 months later. And so she's left with, at the time, with 3 children in a small apartment in Los Angeles, California. And then shortly after that, we were evicted. Because then she didn't really take care of a lot of her business because she was underage. And so her mother and her grandmother took care of that. And my grandmother was a diabetic and she was an alcoholic. Because we go back to the disparities, we go back to stress within our lives, right? And we go back to not having what we needed within our communities. So these things evolve, right? And so after we were evicted at that particular time, which they didn't give you a 72-hour notice or anything like that, because if you didn't know your rights, you just kind of got out, you just left. But what that caused was an eviction on this young woman's record, and then she moved around with her children. We couldn't find services in Los Angeles, California, so we moved up to Orange County. So when we moved up to Orange County, we lived in a shelter. where there wasn't enough room in a shelter, so we lived in the back of a church for several months. And this is me, my sister, and my brother, and then my mom was pregnant in that process, and then she had to give up her child to the system. So while we were away from Los Angeles, California, in Orange County, Newport, we ended up going to this this very interesting place because we were sitting in a park one day, and these guys came up to my mom, and they were some Hispanic brothers, and they were noticing that my mom had 3 children, and she was cooking in the park the best way that she could. And so they let her know about this place called Set Free. So they said, if you need housing or whatnot, we will, you can come with us. Well, she was leery to being approached by 3 Hispanic men that looked like gangsters, because we were told to be afraid of each other at that time. And so my mom, she decided, because she wanted to do the best thing for her children, the man that she was with, my father, my stepfather, my father was at the time he was not not existent, but because of his status in immigration, he was getting his paperwork together so that he can come to present himself to be my father. And so that's a part of this is like very crucial times in a child's life that we talk about today. What we're seeing, if rent is what it is today, what was it back then? She probably was paying $25, $30, maybe the most $50 for rent, right? Because we didn't have a playground, we didn't have a near park, we had a cement, we jumped off of mattresses just to have fun. My mom used to keep us in the house all the time so we can be safe, but then the time when we did go outside, me and my sister, we would sit on the step and we would count the cars. Ooh, that's my car, that's my car, ooh, that's my car, right? And at one of those times that we were sitting on the stairs, these 3 dudes ran across the street when this car was parked, and there was a Hispanic man and a Hispanic woman sitting in the car, and those brothers approached that lady, but they didn't speak English, and because they were high on dope, them brothers killed those people in front of me and my sister at the age of 5 and 6 years old. I saw that. And I would never forget that vivid, that what happened on that particular day. Like if it was yesterday. Whenever I visit LA, I go back because I always have to remind myself of where I came from. And so that was the part of the life that I had. I was in foster care for about 1.5 years, and then after we had some really good, me and my sister had some really good foster family. First time living in a house. That was huge, to have your own room and to have your own bed, but it really wasn't ours. I was still homeless, right? Because that wasn't my house, that wasn't my mother, that wasn't my parents, but they took good care of us because at that time, it was the right thing to do for black families to get black children and take care of them. We were fortunate that we had a family that took really good care of me and my sister, but on the other hand, my little brother didn't have that. So that's a part of my journey, and I got 5 minutes, and so that's the long extensive part of me. But I moved to Portland in 1995 after living in Central America with my father's mother, who is Garifuna, Belizean. And so I went to school in Central America, high school in Central America, so I didn't see a lot of the things that my other siblings saw, but I was still aware of what was going on. And I was like the star kid in my community because I was American. Everybody wanted to be like me because I'm the American. But I wanted to be like them because that was my community, that was my culture, that was my tribe. And I had learned something different about myself than I knew before I got there. And so when I returned back to the States, I wanted to go to LA. And mind you, my mom, when she sent me to go live with my dad one summer, or to visit my dad one summer, then I ended up in, she disappeared. So I didn't see my mom for about 9 years. I was 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, I didn't see my mom until I was 27 years old. And I'm 42 today. So when I came back to Portland, on my journey back to Portland, so my sister came, me and my sister reconnected. After those long years of not being each other, she moved to Portland, but she didn't really like it because she lived in California. She was used to being in the sunny Cali. And so at that time when I lived here from 95 to 2005, the conversation about race was not in my face. It was not in my face every day, although I knew I lived in a predominantly white city, but I also had black friends. I had a community that I can come to. I knew where I can go get my hair done, where I can go get some soul food, and I had those kind of relationships in Northeast Portland. And so when I left, it was because I wanted to venture out on my journey and grow and learn more about myself. And so I moved back to Portland in 2014, and people were asking me, Q, why are you moving to Portland? I was like, well, Portland is an easy city, Portland's this, Portland that, but I had not known that Portland had changed as much as it did. So on the first day that I got back, I saw all of the extensive changes in this city that really broke my heart. Got landed in the middle of the winter and saw all the people that were houseless. I got services through transitional projects, because I only got 2 minutes, y'all. I got help through transitional projects, which led me back to my childhood to recognize what it was that I wanted to do while I was in this city. And I saw amazing people like Ibrahim. I saw amazing people like Xenia from the Urban League that's in the room that encouraged me. Even though I was curious about housing, I was able to walk into a space and learn and share. But at this point, I'm taking action. Like I've housed, so this is one of the clients that I housed that is from Portland that had lost housing due to a marriage situation. And this is her getting keys. You can slide to the next slide. This is a young man, and I posted these on my social media because we use social media, not because I wanted to exploit my community, but because I wanted to encourage people. I wanted to let y'all know that we are here, and we are achieving, and we are doing what it is that we can do. So in that year and a half that I worked with Urban League and joined, I housed 175 people. Well, it's not easy work. So this guy right here, him and his wife got a divorce, and he wanted to, he could get a place to stay for about 9 months. We ran into each other, and this was his first black, so I call this Black Boy Joy. Because black lives do matter. Black men do matter, black women matter, black children matter, our ancestors matter, every black person in this room matters. And if you have a sign in your yard that says, Black Lives Matter, and not a black person live on the side of you, or in front of you, or behind you, that's a problem, right? That's a huge problem as we continue to talk about houselessness in Portlandia. Like, that's a mock of the city. It's not a good thing to be called Portlandia, but we're here today expressing ourselves how we feel about it. Can you show me the next slide, please? And so, Donna, I'm here because a lot of reasons, but I respect Miss Donna because I met her several years ago when she came to an event that I was at, and she encouraged me. And so for me, it's my African American community that comes first, but these are folks that were living that right to dream that I housed, and this is something that I posted, and I had to go and find these pictures. But they are now, after being on the street for Eve knows their journey longer than I did, but they're still in housing today. And it took them 12 years to get housing. And I said SH before it. This shit. Talking this shit is not easy to talk this talk, to walk this walk, in every aspect that I do in this city. Can I get another one, please? And so when I first moved back, getting off the Greyhound, Kevin, this brother was sitting, he's from Portland, he's a native. I advocate for my people from Portland because I know that they were there for me when I first moved here and welcomed me into the community. This brother was sitting on the bench in front of Greyhound for 10 months. 10 months, you guys. They removed that bench after that brother left that bench. And then towards the end of his journey, before he got housing, they started to arrest him because they said that he was threatening. He's all of like 35 years old now. But he was having a lot of mental health issues because of the stuff that he was going through, because he was being accused by his family, and people had turned their backs on him. And so Kevin now still is in housing. Yeah. He doesn't have he has his own space. He can come as he please, but he has his housing, and it took him when he was ready. Because when I met him, I was like, brother, you need to get up off this bench. And so I woke him up, and he woke me up. And I continue to keep pressing forward because Kevin meant so much to me. He is my brother. So I was asking for, he had a phone, somebody donated a phone, and I share this stuff so that people can help me when I'm in need of, because these services are not easy to come by. Can I get another one, please? And so this is a young lady that I housed, and her husband. Two of their children, she had this, when I seen her this day, this was not too long ago. But look at the signs. Sometimes we just pass right by houseless people in this city because we don't want to be bothered. But everybody on the streets is screaming for help. Everybody says, help me. And God bless you in the fashion that you do that. And so she's housed, but she doesn't make a lot of money. She lost her job because she had an unexpected early pregnancy. And this is what she's doing today to get spare change so she can survive. Because the system already took 2 of her kids away from her because her husband is black. And she's a white woman. And so this is what she has to deal with and have to be the strong one because he has mental health issues as well. And they're dealing with it. So this encouraged me to see that she didn't shy away from me, but she allowed me to do this, not because I wanted, again, to exploit her, but I wanted to share, continue to keep sharing the message in our community because, again, it is not easy. I think that's the last slide that I have, you guys, but I can say that through this journey and walking with people and being in the rain and being on the bus and trying to help them locate services when the criminal system has done them wrong in every system and I just happen to be in the way, I'm like, dang, why me? I be trying to hide because my phone started to ring, my email started to go off. And I appreciate Urban League of Portland and Join for letting me have those flexible services so that I could have helped people when the deposit was $3,000. $3,000. If you don't have a job and they want 1 time or 2 times the rent, how do you expect somebody to come up with $3,000? Because now the renters become greedy because of the situation. This has not just happened yesterday, so we want to stop saying, we went to a housing justice conference back in January. It's about justice, you all. Yeah. It's not a crisis no more, because we have a surplus of housing in the city and we still have more people on the streets that are dying every day. Right. All right, so I just wanted to bring some of these clarities to, and be the last person to speak, right? So that thanks guys, thank you for being here. Let's give it up for all of us for being here.
So now we're going to have Q&A. And if you have a question, come up. While you're coming up, I'd like to share something. I had a cousin who became houseless. In California, in the Bay Area, where the climate is very mild. And she was an MSW, that's a Master's of Social Work. Got harassed by her landlord, ended up losing her house, and ended up houseless, moved around. I didn't know she was. She didn't tell anybody. Nobody knew. Ended up catching pneumonia and dying. And she died early 40s. Now, what happens is that when a person is houseless, what kills them is that their core body temperature drops. And there's no way to get warm. And so they are susceptible to all kinds of disease and then they die. So we have to do better than we're doing. And I wanted to explain something else. Laquita talked about 2 things. In June, our topic is mental health and race and racism. So we'll have some psychologists from different ethnic groups who are going to talk about the effects of racism on the people who are in their ethnic group and what happens. You notice that they all mentioned a lot about people having mental health issues. The mental health issues, if y'all want to ask a question, come up here. I'm burning time so you get up here to ask the question. You're going to be in the microphone, so come up. So, you'll have to come out here and grab somebody? Thank you. I like you. So, the rest of you, not so much. So, anyway, what Laquita doesn't know, and I was around during this time, the reason that so many black families were endangered is because they changed the social assistance system. It used to be that there was welfare so that people could be well. And families were on welfare, and they had low-income families that got welfare, and they still, the husband might have 2, 3 jobs, but they were getting assistance to help them live. Then they changed it to AFDC, Aid for Dependent Children. And they passed a law that if you wanted your wife and kids, the woman and kids, to get assistance, there could be no man in the house. So you're a black man, and this is the other thing that's interesting. I saw this in the neighborhood because we had a business, we had a grocery store, and so we knew everybody's business. The white folks got welfare or social, I think they went on like a social security, some sort of social security one or something like that. Black folks were on AFDC. And so the white families got to stay together. The black families did not. And they would come, and the social workers would come and do a raid every month. And if you had a television, or a cigarette, or a telephone, or a TV, you know, any of those kinds of things, any, you know, too many clothes, if there was any sign that a man had been in the house, you would lose your services. So at the same time they were doing all of this, they were dropping off truckloads, and check your sources, they were dropping off truckloads of guns and drugs in the black community. They would just appear. Nobody would know how they got there. And somebody would finally say, this truck been here a week. What is it? Open up the door. All kinds of drugs in there. All kinds of guns. That was so the black community would self-destruct. So I keep saying this to white folks, and last month, I guess somebody got pissed and left after I said it. I don't care. I want you to hear me. After they quit going after the people of color, y'all are next. You are next. And right now you're middle class, but you could be like my cousin who was living, I'm trying to remember the name of the town, it was at Oxnard or something like that in the Bay Area. No, it wasn't Richmond, it was over the hill, you know, over the hill where it was this little town that was the hoity-toity town. But she lost her job because Reagan cut the money for social services, and she had been on the federal program, so she lost all her job and everything. So went from living in the hoity-toity community to being houseless to being dead. We're all vulnerable. We're all vulnerable. And you know, and last month a person left, insulted because I said that you can lose your middle class status. This was a white guy. Well, I'm never gonna be that. I'm always gonna be middle class. Oh, buddy. So understand, we are all just a paycheck away. So please talk to these folks afterwards. I'm sorry, but I need to tell the stories. A nice lady that I like, come over here.
Yes, I do.
Well, I have two questions, and
Closer to the mic.
I have two questions, and they're not really my questions. They're a friend of mine who owns a bar and is white. And he says that everyone he sees who's homeless just wants a free drink, and they want to be homeless. They don't want to be in shelters. They don't want to be in the house. They want to be homeless. And so he also says that a lot of the people in Portland who are homeless have been, like somebody comes from Boise, Idaho, and they give them a bus ticket to Portland. So a lot of people in Portland who are homeless really don't belong here. They didn't grow up here. They didn't live here. So those are my two questions, and I don't know the answer, but I don't agree with his feeling that you can not worry about homelessness because it's their fault. It's their fault they're homeless, I think, is what he's saying.
If you offer me a free drink, I want it too.
Raises your body temperature.
That's right. I don't think everybody wants a free drink. I mean, they may be thirsty, they may not have no money, they may need something to keep, because those are survival instincts. Humans, those are human rights. Food, water, and sleep and rest. What was the other thing you said? I can't remember. That everybody want to be homeless. You go ask a houseless person if they want to be houseless. Not you, I'm just saying. That's what you said. Young people, teenagers. No, that's not true. I mean, but you need to go out and talk to people, because you walk past them and you see them there and you think they're different than everybody else, but we're not. We have the same basic needs. And that's all they're asking for. teenagers could be the runaways from the foster parent or be runaways from people doing something to them, like a step parent or something, or being mistreated, doing something. So being able to come up with those Grecian myths, I don't think that's fair to them.
Let me answer something. And so you also mentioned something about the what we call here the ticket home program, and
Yeah.
there was a few places I know that offered that to folks, and what was happening because it was being mismanaged of some sort, and it was just like, we'll get that person to the state that they went to. So there was a couple people that came to our agency and needed some help. You know, they said they wanted to get back to New York or wherever they were from. And so we made arrangements, but they had to, on the other end, make sure that they had a place to go and somebody was going to receive them when they got to their next destination. And that was happening for some time, and people were, what they found out was abusing that system, because that wasn't the point of it being, again, a part of the system, right? It wasn't the point, but money was received for several different states to make that happen. And so people found it that if they were in a place that was super cold and there's 4 seasons here, they were gonna hang out here for a little bit longer to try to get stuff in place, and it would take a little bit longer for that to happen.
I just wanted to add something that, to what Ibrahim said about kids being runaways. I did discipline at the middle school for 4 years, and one of the things, I had a student that was always in fights. He was so angry, and I couldn't figure out what the deal was. Found out he was a foster child. And I had met his foster father, who seemed like a very nice man. Come to find out there were 2 guys, a black guy and a white guy, and they kept foster boys. And they were abusing all of those boys. And I didn't know that until they got arrested. So finally, somehow they got caught and were arrested and put in jail. And the child came back to our school again, and I just was so sorry. And I said, I didn't know. I wish you had told me. I could have done something to help you. But he didn't know what my point of view was. And you have to tell people. You have to let them know what you will do to help them. So please understand that everybody who's on the street is not there because they're lazy or don't care. It's because there is something that has gone wrong in their life.
So if I just add one thing about the comment about, people want to be out on the streets. When it comes to youth, specifically, there's kind of a term that's used in social work that we refer to like people being like street entrenched, which is like referring to people who, are used to living outside, basically. And so people learn to cope with that lifestyle because they have to. And when it comes to youth, again, it's like a lot of youth are so let down by the system and so exploited by adults and let down by adults that's another reason why we'll see that you have a lot of youth outside who are, quote unquote runaways. A lot of times it's because they're leaving programs in and out of either like a juvenile detention, into foster care, into like some kind of social program. And so there's a couple things going on there, which is the fact that in a lot of cases, and this also goes for adults at different shelter programs, because people say, oh, how come you're not accessing services? How come you're not doing this or whatever? First of all, there's a lack of services anyways, right? That's bottom line. But the second thing is also that if you're accessing those services, right, and we're talking about all this historic trauma that people go through, and all the oppression and repression, and especially for people non-male identified, there's a lot of, there's sexual trauma and there's sexual abuse, and it goes on within that system, even of those services. And so even, I won't say what it is, but there are programs that we know of where there are people who are traffickers that exist around these programs because they're looking for people. So in other words, some of the things, again, when people, oh, you're not getting services. How come you're not getting services? Why are these kids running away from these places? Well, partially because they're being exploited in, of, and from those places too. So that's kind of the thing. And they're not all these super safe places, and sometimes they're just kind of locked inside these kind of cages, even if it's not incarceration, but they're in some kinds of programs for youth where they have very little freedom anyways, and they're sitting around all day trying to like get a hold of their, and no offense to any DHS caseworkers, but trying to get a hold of their caseworker. Where's my caseworker? I left some messages, and and again, these caseworkers might have like 30 kids on a list. So also kind of nod to them in that sense, because that's also hard work too, because they're there's the whole funding thing going on. So there's a lot going on with those ideas about why people might not be accessing services or not in a program. So.
And another thing to add to that, if somebody is denying services, you may be offering them the wrong services.
First, I just want to say, y'all brought the fire. I can't remember the last time we had a standing ovation, and I'm not a crier, and I was like sobbing over there. So thank you for everything. My question is, I was looking at the statistic that Ibrahim you had up. It was looking at the national demographic averages coupled with the houselessness, and then the next slide was transgender. And so in both statistics, Black folks ranked statistically higher, head and shoulders above, obviously the white and Asian counterparts, and Latino kind of on par. And so I think a question that came up at my table earlier, or really kind of an acknowledgement, and this is said quite a bit, and we've talked about this, why don't we see so many folks of color, Black and Latino folks, in Portland? And I think that the assumption is most houseless, homeless folks are downtown, and you mostly see a lot of white folks. I lived on Powell and 82nd for a while. There were white folks in cars and encampments, up and down my street. Hardly ever saw any Black and Latino folks. Could you speak to what that dynamic is here in Portland and why that is?
That dynamic is that people of color are used to, when they tell things, people use it against them. And so they're not likely to tell the truth about themselves because they're afraid it's going to be used against them. And so in that case, that we have to have people that can relate to that, been in that situation, that experience the same thing, or they can see somebody that looked like them. The first college I went to was 5 Blacks at that college, and I was 17. I got up to do a presentation, and everybody, and that's why a lot of times I wear glasses so I can see everybody the same color. But it kind of froze me because I didn't see nobody from Chicago. In 74, I had a big afro, dog collar, big shoes and stuff. And I went to this all-white college, and they had short hair. It was a business college. And I didn't see nothing that resembled the lifestyle that I grew up. So I failed that presentation. And that happens in the Black community when they go before somebody and they see somebody sitting behind their desk with all these PhDs. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you don't use that to make nobody feel beneath you or below you and stuff like that. And that's what happens in the Black community.
And I'm just gonna say, we just have to be like really in a realistic place that in Oregon, Black folks were prohibited to be here to begin with. And so the numbers, the statistics that are high is from a lack of or not in welcoming African Americans into this state. And so it was prohibited for Blacks to be here. And then they did settle in through Vanport and through other entities of being here and kept being displaced and pushed out every single time until this most recent gentrification is what it's called. So you have Black folks that, yes, you'll see them downtown because those are most likely the people who have been living here all of their lives and have been through these systems when they was running the system before other people got here. So they won't go other places because they're not used to being in Southeast. They're not used to being off of, past until now. And so you will see some of the folks kind of wander off away from their community, but you will also see up and down MLK, there's still African American folks, Black men specifically, like hanging around about MLK because that's their hood, that's their neighborhood, this is where they grew up at. And so just because it's the change doesn't mean that they have changed, but it doesn't mean that they don't care about where they come from. So for me, that's something that I learned because I've lived here twice and doing the history that I've done. So those are some of the reasons when it comes to the Latino community, they've been like pushed in Hillsborough or they were in Gresham, and it's just now that they have a wide presence. After they moved black people out, they said, okay, brown people, y'all come on in. So there's a replacement there. There's New Columbia, there's a replacement. There's the replacing the community that was here before to put it involved in people of color, people of culture.
I just want to add this. One of the reasons that it's very difficult for, Kathy, come on up here. One of the reasons that it's very difficult for people of color to go to these places that I was born here, Latinos were only in the fields before. And they did not come into the towns. I went to Pacific and Forest Grove. There were no Latinos in those towns, and it was dangerous for them to be there. Oregon, I don't know if you know, but out in Banks, Oregon has the largest Ku Klux Klan population west of the Mississippi. And where'd you say? I thought somebody said something else. But anyway, and the other thing is that they pushed black folks out to Gresham. Well, black folks didn't go to Gresham when I was a kid because that's where the scary redneck white folks lived. And it was a dangerous place because if you went out there, you would get beat if you were lucky and maybe dead. So there's a whole lot of fear that people have in being out there in Hillsborough, Aloha, and out in Gresham area.
I can do it. Okay, I don't know how to ask my question, so I'll just put it out there. If houseless people you find housing for them, but then they can't maintain, they can't get used to the system, and they get kicked out because they can't follow the rules. I feel very passionate about that. I think it's such a shame that people get housed and then lose their housing because they can't. Is there anything that's being done to kind of educate these people about living indoors?
So every person's situation is really different. And what I dealt with the organizations that I worked with, they called us the In-Reach team. So we were to go to Right to Dream, one of the campsites, and Dignity Village, and a few of the shelters. Where I was coming into a little snag is that I wasn't finding African American people as my organization, like, even though I help everyone, but that was if people felt comfortable with talking to me about that. So people of color oftentimes won't go into these places because they feel the discrimination that happens within these systems. That's one. Secondly, the rent is just really expensive. And so as we're on this journey looking, there was people who did get housed. So the model became housing first. It's something we get people into housing, and then we'll just worry about everything else. Well, if a person been like moving and couch surfing and doing all these different things for several years, then it's hard for them to adapt, and they only have a little bit of time to get themselves together, right? As far as like get a job. So like if you're on a fixed income, you may have an income, but it's not enough to support the $900 of rent, right? And you're 50-something years old in a new market, it's hard for you to find that type of work or that supplement for your income. And if you do get an income, you might lose it because you may be making too much money. So these are the things that the system has created that brings us to this situation. And those who are young, who are younger, that may have not had that experience, they are been dealing with like we said, the bouncing back and forth. And so there's no first-time renters get their apartment. It sucks, because we just have to keep coming up with solutions like more villages and things like that people can transition out of off the streets into that, and then to another level. We got to take it and pave the way for people to get there.
That's what I mean. Transition these people. Teach these people how to live indoors if they've been out in the street for.
The thing is that when we're taught to live inside, and then when people go outside, they come up with their own form of survival. And they get criminalized for having these survival crime things like sleeping on the sidewalk, or creating a community which we all belong to, a common unity, that everybody's in the community neighborhood. And when they come up with their own, they not used, when they get apartments, they not used to filling out maintenance applications. So they're used to doing things for themselves, Jimmy rigging, like you have a leaky faucet, you'll put string up to hold the faucet up so it won't leak. Or you be aware of your friends being out in the cold, you invite them over to come in and sleep and stay warm. Or you're not used to buying good food because you can't cook food in the street, so you buy food, your food somewhere, you go to and nuke your food, and you buy food that you warm up in the microwave. So we have to have more apartment readiness classes that teach people these things. You have to have more social service workers that's not sitting in their office, but going out, reaching out to the people, educating them. You have to have follow-up work where people go and say, hey, how are you doing? Or do you know how to do this? Do you know how to do application? Do you have your social security card? You know, we need more people educating the people that became complacent and used to living in the street, especially our youth now that's growing up in the street, that have no parental guiding, that have no formal education.
Yeah, sign me up, Avery.
Sign you up.
All right, so I suppose at the risk of sounding naive, I live along the I-205 corridor.
Oh, yeah.
And we see a lot of houseless people every day. And I feel like, obviously, you know, you have a captive audience. These are people who are now understanding and hopefully empowered to want to do something. And I just want to know, in our everyday, with your organizations, is there something that we could do to help?
Yes. So, we have something called an ambassador program where we connect the people that live in houses and people that live in that's not in houses, where they come up with reasonable solutions on how to do things, like if you have bottles in your thing, you say, hey, these bottles are free, you can go on our dumpster and get these and clean them up. Or you can talk with the people that once were your neighbors, because we are creatures of habit. We stand in that neighborhood we once lived in, and you can talk to them about keeping the area clean, or having ad hoc village where you know these people and you don't call the police because you see a houseless person. What crime is a houseless person committing while they sleeping? And that's mainly all they want to do is get some rest. But if they can't rest, they walk around, and that's how they get traumatized and how they develop mental illness. And I ask these social workers, if you can't tell if a person is coming down from drugs or have a mental issue or being sleep deprived, you ain't doing your client no justice. And you have to know the difference. And in order to know these differences is to reach out and help these people. The order to help your own neighborhood is don't stop calling the police, stop sweeping people, because once you get to know that person, if you sweep a new wave of people coming in, and that new wave of people may not be the people you want in your neighborhood, because they're not from that neighborhood. So we all should reach out and come up with our organization, the Right to Survive, and our ambassador program, and learn how to live with one another.
Cool. I have two questions. My first one is about resources. And I guess what would you guys recommend in terms of organizations if people want to make donations? Because I think a lot of people go to like Goodwill, and it's like I would prefer something more local so then I can actually help the community. And then I guess kind of tied into that question, what kind of items should people donate? Because like I learned recently about like with women, you know, women don't have access to pads, tampons, something as simple as that, and like they're taxed, and it's just like, it's really expensive. So people have to choose between their next meal or getting pads or tampons, which is crazy. And then my other question, and I don't know if this is true, but I heard that there's like a tiny home project where people can, if they're homeowners, they can allow like a tiny home to be built in their backyard, and I guess like families or people who are homeless can like rent those out, but I'm not too sure if that's true. And I guess what are your thoughts on that?
Hello. Okay. So for the service piece, there has been an increase in our houseless population since I moved here in 2014 to 2019. That's one. So folks will often refer, what I never like to do with the folks, and I don't like to say my clients or my participants, but it depends on the relationship that I have with that person, how I can address them, and when it comes to the services. So when we would come up with a plan, and most of the time the person is starting from ground zero, or starting all over again. And so there's organizations like Community Warehouse. There's April that's in the room from Community Warehouse, or formerly worked with Community Warehouse, which is if you have furniture, you can donate to 2 of their locations, and dishes and things like that, because people need those sorts of things when they move in, most definitely, because they've been sleeping in a sleeping bag or however they've been sleeping for that amount of time. There's Join, who is off of 82nd. They're a really great organization. They work with the folks that are houseless, and you have to locate them in that way. There's TPI. There's a bunch of places that you can really drop things off. But the part that would get me is like, once we drop it off, what do we do to really can make a connection? And you talked about women, and so something that I started doing maybe 3 years ago is called Community Soul Sisters, where we would get together and we would make some chili and we would talk about things, and we would go out onto the streets and pack hygiene kits for women and find and locate the women that we could locate to talk with them, but also like kind of keep up with them in the area if we could. So those are some of the ways. I think just getting with some of your folks and these solutions, like it's no one way or another how to do it or not, that we can start something. And Eve will answer the other question.
Also, you can donate to Right to Survive.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put that down. Yeah, money. Because we give out sleeping bags, we give out tents, we do hygiene kits, and Sister of the Rose is working on a cafe downtown, is working on hygiene things, so you can donate to Sister of the Rose and get them stuff. And that is a lot of things that's forgotten about women and the things they need. But let's talk about what the children need, what the men need, what everybody needs. They need a safe place to sleep. And again, Right to Survive is probably the only grassroots organization that go out into the streets and talk to the people. So we go on walks. We call them under the bridge walk. We go into vacant buildings, into the bushes, into where nobody would go, and talk to the people and ask them what are their needs. And a lot of them would say, not food. A lot of them would say, not a hand up, but a job where they can support themselves, the opportunity to take care of themselves. And if we can only talk to them instead of going on what we think that person needs or what they think that person is, and be wrong and serve them the wrong way. And the second question, well, I can wait. That tiny house village. I think tiny house village is a means to get people productive, because they're not going to get productive if they're not getting rest. Because the first thing a houseless person think about is sleep. Second thing is food. Third thing is the safety. Because how can you go look productive and all your sentimental values on your back and in the backpack or in a shopping cart? If someone pulling up to your office looking for work and they got a shopping cart full of stuff, let's be realistic. Would you hire them? Nobody saying nothing. They don't want me to go for it. I wouldn't, because you don't know where they coming from. I mean, that don't look productive. So if somebody is able to wash their clothes, it's when we did the visual where Adam was talking about, this young lady read a poem. I live on the streets, but the nearest restroom is 2 blocks away. And if I had to go in a hurry, if it's raining, I may urinate on myself. If I urinate on myself, there's no shower to wash up. There's nowhere to wash my clothes. What do? I walk around in urine drenched clothes and smell it, because there's no public restroom, there's no laundromat, and there's no shower. We can just go two steps away while we're living inside to do that. And that's the things we need to think about when we talk about houselessness. What we have and what they don't have, and the things that's so out of their reach to accomplish.
Okay, so I hope this will make sense. Got it. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have occurred with problems because I have a criminal record and getting into housing. I have over 18 months clean and sober. I brought letters to these different apartment complexes. I actually am an employee here. I had a letter from my boss to bring. I had letters from treatment centers I was in. I had drug test results of clean UAs, just because I needed to find an apartment. I was renting a room at the time in sober living, and me and my girlfriend wanted to find an apartment. Well, we found our apartment, and I was just lucky that they only did a statewide background check and not a federal background check, and I was able to get into the apartment. They didn't want anything to do with any of my letters. They didn't care. You know, they were just like, oh, well, I guess you passed, so you can move in. So now we're in our apartment, and I just feel like me and my girlfriend, we are the only LGBTQ couple in this community. And now we are getting letters saying that they want to kick us out of our apartment because of our dog, which is a service animal, because I'm diabetic. So I just feel like it's not because of my dog. My dog's well trained. I feel like it's because my neighbors have complained about like us being a couple and like it not being okay to have in their community. And I just feel like, I guess my question is, what rights do we have as renters that maybe that you know about, as with, you know, I do have a criminal background, so if they were to extend the search now, can they come after me and kick me out because I do have a record, even though I was up front with them and told them about it, you know? So I'm just kind of nervous about that fact as like what my rights are and what can happen because, you know, I do have a past, but now I'm doing good, you know? So I'm just hoping that will count for something.
Everybody have a past. Everybody. Every one person in here don't have a past. You know, I bet they open up the closet, all those bones coming out. So and last year was 111 people moving here a day. And where was the 111 people that had housing going? And we don't have no, we can't afford the housing here. We don't have no tenants' right protection laws. We don't have, the landlord can charge astronomical prices and stuff. And so the thing of it is, I don't think they can, because if you up front and they rented you the apartment, I don't think they can kick you out just because of your gender preference or your gender choice, whatever. But I know it's people in here who's going through similar things can answer that, so if y'all can talk to
So one of the places you can go is Oregon Fair Housing. And they're downtown and they can help. Call them. It's hard to get through on the line, but give them a call and ask your question. Okay. So there are laws that can help you.
Also, Community Alliance tenants. They're doing amazing work. It's sometimes they recently have been at the state to focus on no-cause evictions. And so there is some changes in the way that renters, the discrimination that people that have been facing over the last couple of years due to this high increase, and maybe because they were like, oh, she's just this young white woman, and then when they start to really just notice that you're in this relationship, it starts to affect how they might view you regardless of your past. And so just keep doing what you're doing, keep staying focused on your life and being healthy within that, and contact and reach out to those folks, and give me your number and I'll help you with some of those kind of connections as well. Okay?
Hi everyone. I just wanted to address, I run a nonprofit that helps homeless families with children, and our primary mission is to help families move back into housing. It's called Portland Homeless Family Solutions, or PHFS. And so what we see is we help families move back into housing, and then we try to help them keep that housing. And we see so much right now in this community that landlords are discriminating against protected classes, like people of color, people with disabilities, people with LGBTQIA statuses, and folks don't have knowledge or resources to turn to, and so they don't know that they have rights and that they have protections. And so going to places like Community Alliance of Tenants and Fair Housing Council and places like that really can help you. What we see is so many landlords will discriminate against our families. We have a couple of attorneys on our board, and the attorneys literally don't do anything other than write a letter on their letterhead saying this person is being represented by me, the attorney, send it to the landlord, everything goes away. And I mean, so you can see how the landlords are really taking advantage of this situation right now and are really screwing people over and making a lot of money on the backs of homeless families and agencies that are paying them.
All right, thank you. No, we don't have time for any more questions because we were supposed to start a discussion group 40 minutes ago. So there are some of you who will be leaving, and I just want to say this before you do. What we hope is that we will have at least 50 people who will sign up to volunteer with Right to Survive tonight. And where's the clipboard?
Yeah.
Okay, the clipboard, yeah, where, Adam, you need to pass it over this way. Has it been around already?
Yeah, did everybody sign up on
So,
that?
and also, there's a sign-up sheet at the back of the room and then one out in the hall. We do not do a fundraiser for our folks who come to speak. We want you to go work with their organization. But we are doing fundraising for RaceTalks. I am retired. I'm 70 years old, helping take care of my 100-year-old mother. And I am doing this for free. And I've been retired almost 9 years now. So we need money to keep RaceTalks going. And if you were to go somewhere, you would be paying about $40, $50 for this kind of a program. So please open your wallets, put a 10, put a 20 in that envelope. Pretty please. Because you know you lose that much money very easily. So now, before you go, if you're going to leave, please make sure you fill out your evaluation before you go. And also,
T-shirts.
T-shirt.
We got T-shirts.
well, they're going to put their stuff out in the hall and have somebody who's going to sell it. RaceTalk sells T-shirts too. Do what you got to do. But I want to thank our speakers for coming tonight. And let's hear for them. And please consolidate your groups. Thank you. So we're not going to have our full time to have discussion groups. We're only going to have about 25 minutes to do discussion groups. And I would appreciate if you're going to leave, the people who have groups and there are other places folks can go and consolidate. Like this is a small, you got a group here. So please facilitators stand up, let folks know where you are for your group, and I'll be back to you in 25 minutes. Works is you see in the tray there are the little slips of paper, and so people who are the facilitators, please pull those slips of paper out so that they can see them. And so what I'm going to put my name and my email address and my phone number on this one. And
Christine.
Is going to put go ahead.
My name and email address on this one.
Okay, and we're going to exchange that. Now I got the purple one, she got the hot pink one. Then we're going to take the green one, and we're going to write
Our name and address. Our name, Christine.
We're going to write Christine and Donna on this one, and then where's the basket? Miss Stephanie, you got the basket? Stephanie's going to come around with the basket, and you're going to drop it in there, and then we're going to have a drawing for a $25 gift certificate. Oh, and we're going to raffle off one of these, so if your name's not in there, you ain't get one. All right, so you have exactly 3 minutes to get it together. Okay. Put your name in here. Here comes Stephanie. All right, put your papers in the air so Stephanie, and wave them like you just don't care so Stephanie can come pick them up.
Did you really say that?
I did. Okay, shake your power in.
We've been contemplating doing a podcast called The Daughter.
Your time is up. All right, last sweep. Here comes Stephanie. Quickly. Anybody else want to put their name in the basket? I see those people back there at the back table writing. Hurry up, y'all are writing slow. Bobby, are you guys doing it? Okay. So here's the thing. All right, if I can have your attention for a second, please. Y'all ain't listening. Y'all are not listening. Oh, this is worse than having a classroom with little people. You're acting like those kindergartners. They didn't listen at all. So what we're going to do is have two drawings, one for the shirt and one for the $25 gift certificate. And my suggestion to you is to sign up the person who you did the exchange with. Get together anyway. And then take a picture with the RaceTalks brochure and put it on our RaceTalks website. I think there's a place there, isn't there, Shayna? Has Tressa done that yet?
What?
Where they can post their picture with the RaceTalks brochure where they've gone out for coffee.
We have to do it on Facebook.
Oh, we have to do it on Facebook. Okay, so post it on Facebook, and what we will do is have a drawing. And then those people, and send us an email saying that you did that, and we'll look for it on Facebook, and then we'll have a drawing for another $25 gift certificate. Okay? Everybody ready? This is not a lot of cards in here. Clearly, you are rich people. You don't care. Okay, so our winner is Nancy Merchant and Hima Abdullahi. All right. All right. Thank you. Let's turn around so the camera can take the picture. Smile and wave. Woo! All right. Thank you. And now for the t-shirt. The t-shirt goes to Bobby Father and Melissa Haverson. All right, come get your t-shirt. Oh, you know what? Okay, this is different. Okay, here's the thing. I'll give you guys another gift certificate too. So, I had two. So this is another $25 gift certificate. So, smile for the camera. All right, so now I am going to pick up a card and tear it in half, and I'm going to let somebody pick who gets the T-shirt.
I live like exact opposite. I know.
All right, the T-shirt. The T-shirt goes to Sarah Louise Allen. Wait a minute. Sarah, don't you work with the organization? No. Wait, do you have a T-shirt already? Oh, gosh. You're just cheating. Okay, Lisa Faye, are you part of it? Right, just about. Okay, so tell me top or bottom. Oh no, these people already won something. These people cheated. All right, do you want me to pick the name on the top or the one on the bottom? Top, okay. Peter Parks. Where are you? Peter Parks, are you here? All right, Peter Parks wins the t-shirt. All right, thank you so much for coming. Be sure to take some brochures with you and share with your friends. Our program next month is Coincidence or Intentional. overt racism during Black History Month. We'll be back here next month, is that May? Yep. May 14th. Thank you for coming. Drive safely. Good night.